Welcome to the Speak with People podcast, where we believe that healthy communication is the key to unlocking your leadership potential. We are the go-to resource for leaders looking to greatly improve their communication skills. Whether it's one-on-one interactions, team settings, public speaking, or your digital communication. By improving these skills, leaders can create stronger connections and drive positive change within their organization. Each and every episode, we sit down with leaders from various fields, just like you're grabbing a cup of coffee with them. We dive into real, practical conversations. Our goal is to help you transform your communication skills so you can lead more effectively, build stronger relationships, and make a lasting impact. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's learn together. Well, how can you foster wellness at work while keeping your team energized, engaged, thriving? How can you as a leader make sure you're investing in yourself so that you're able to invest in other people? Ooh, these are tough questions. We're hitting this hard when this podcast airs at the very beginning of 2025, because if we get this right, imagine what will happen in our leadership. Well, today I'm beyond excited. Humbled to have an incredible guest, Jackie Glass. She's a wellness advocate, leadership expert. She is a phenomenal communicator. I have learned an absolute ton by watching her videos and her reels, and I'm so excited. Truth be told, this is the second time we're recording this podcast. I probably didn't need to tell you, the listeners, but last time we had a little audio problem on our end. And so Jackie so graciously said that she would come back. And so I'm so thankful. Jackie, thank you so much for your time. Can't wait for this interview.
Absolutely. I am so glad to be here. And round two is usually better than round one. So I think we're on to something good right now.
There you go. I mean, I'll tell you that I told you just off, as I wasn't recording yet, but the first interview, gave me a great kick in the pants that I needed, opened up my eyes, because you have done a ton with coaching, with therapy, with the easy method, with Working Genius. You just bring so much to the plate. So before we hop into this conversation on wellness and health, why don't you give our listeners just a little bit more about you, who you are, what you do, what brought you to this place that you're at today?
Sure, absolutely. Usually I like to tell my story by telling a story about my story.
I love it.
And it started as a 9-year-old girl on the beaches of Michigan. And my family would often go to this little beach town in Michigan. And I, being one of 5 kids, had the loudest voice in the family. And so we would be on the beach, and my mom would say this line to me. She would say, Jackie, someday your voice will save somebody from drowning. And I didn't know much about it at the time. I just thought, well, I've got a very loud voice. And if my brothers or my sister were too far in the water, then mom wanted me close by so that my voice would just project the loudest. And my story can really be summed up in that, is that what my Jewish mom didn't know at the time was she really put this blessing on my life to look for people who were drowning, to look for people who perhaps with their wellness, with their spiritual growth, with their bodies, with their mindset, any area in which somebody would go under, to be mindful, to learn how not only to counsel them, but also to communicate to them, and then to continually search for these creative ways at which somebody experiences wellness. This fact that I learned about drowning is that most people drown a silent drowning.
Wow.
That most people think they are actually okay, and there was still time to call for help, but they think they're okay and don't call for help. And when I learned about that, it just has pushed me forward to be better in the areas in which I coach and speak and lead, to say, who could actually be drowning a silent drowning? And is there ways at which my voice could help the best I can to really throw a lifeline to help somebody experience wellness? So realistically, what that has looked like is I have my therapy degree. And so I had worked in private practice. I've worked in church work and pastoral space. And in this next iteration of work for me as a business owner is I really try to help people from seat to stage. So one-on-one coaching, team facilitation within business and nonprofit, but then also speaking and preaching as well. Again, that somebody could hear a voice of hope and encouragement and wellness, and we could stop the statistic of just these silent drownings that are happening all around us.
Wow, that's quite a way to tell your story. I mean that's pretty powerful. I've listened now. This episode will be episode 193, and so not all of them have been interviews, but listen to a lot of the way people tell stories, and how they introduce themselves. And so I would say 75% of people go from the beginning. Well, my mom and dad, and this happened, and then I went to this degree, and then I had my first job, and they kind of go into this whole thing. What I loved about how you just shared your story is you just gave us a master class on how to wrap your story into it with your life's vision, purpose. Whoa, powerful. And one that like I've heard this before, but it's like hitting me again as I sit in it and go, what an amazing role. Every leader needs the voice like yours to come alongside of them. Let me jump right into the deep end. Why is it though that we don't ask for help?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I've been in, I would say probably 2 months ago, I was a little bit in that season, and I've
Yeah.
seen that season over and over. Why do so many leaders, why do we struggle? We're drowning. And why is
Yes.
it that we just can't ask for help?
Yeah, I think what's so interesting about that is there's often this philosophy that the good work that we're doing and leading other people is meant for other people, but that wellness is not meant for us.
Ugh.
There's no way that we could have a life that is centered on peace and wellness that is not opposite of productivity or opposite of prosperity. That we think that peace and living a life well is at the direct opposite of some of these other principles that we are generously giving to other people. So we want people to learn, and we want them to grow, and we want them to feel cared for, and we want to keep them, and we want them to thrive. And we think that that is always at the cost of our own wellness. And so I
Hmm.
think sometimes what happens is we want to generate so much output. Some of that is just financial stability. Some of that is just really good work. Like we've all learned well how to adult as leaders. But what happens in the adulting is we tend to lose the energy we had when we were a kid.
Wow.
Nobody has to tell a kid to not have as much energy. We are usually trying to contain the energy of children. And what we've done is in all the adulting that we're doing, we also can't forget the energy of a child. One of the reasons I tell that story as a 9-year-old Jackie is because I have to be reminded on tired days that perhaps I am not meant to just live every day tired.
Mm.
Perhaps there is part of me that was so loud and so full of energy that is not meant to be at the opposite of the adulting and the opposite of the good work that I feel like is ahead of me and what I am meant to bring to the world. And so I think it starts with that philosophy of believing that wellness is also for leaders.
Wow.
That every way in which we are generous and giving good gifts and good amount of time to the people we are caring for, that is also meant for us in life. And when we start there, we begin to see that the two are not opposite. But what if in fact, as a leader, us living a life of wellness becomes the most compelling, becomes the most magnetic thing about who we are. And when we start living from that place, that's actually when we believe it for ourselves that what we are giving to others is also meant for us too.
Wow. Wow. Just incredible. So, what are some of the primary energy? Uh, I don't want to use the word suckers because there's a whole lot better word than that. But
Yes. Yes.
what
Yes.
yeah robs us of that energy.
Yeah, one of the intersections I love to just speak and work at is really this intersection of wellness and work. And so I think specifically within the workplace is really we have rhythms of wellness and also recognition of what a tool I use, which is Working Genius. So you had mentioned a little bit about this earlier. But if we start with the rhythms of wellness, I think back to when I was pregnant with our oldest daughter. I have 4 kids. I've got 3 girls and a boy. And when I was pregnant with my oldest daughter, you have to learn how to care for a body. You have to figure out, like, what do I do with this energy sucker that I'm about to bring into the house? Like, what do we do with this? And so I read a few books, and one of the books that I read was this book called The Baby Whisperer by Tracy Hogg. And in there, she talks about the easy method. And the easy method was, how do you take care of a human? How do you take care of this little baby that's about to come in to your house? And as a new mom, I didn't know what I didn't know, but I did know, if raising a kid could be easy, I want to buy and read your book. Well, no parent has ever said that raising a kid is easy, but there was something that was like, I think there's something to me in this. And so what she did in the book, my oldest is almost 16. So 16 years ago, I read this book, and the easy method stands for eat, activity, sleep, in you. And so, with the baby, we feed the baby, and then with activity, we have tummy time with the baby. We have baby has some movement. Then we have sleep. So then we swaddle the baby, we put the baby back to bed. And then why was this you time? This magical 2 minutes until the baby woke up, this, and you start back over. And then, you feed the baby, and then you have activity, and then sleep in you. But what if we translated that to how we still have to take care of our body? So the rhythms of wellness are food, activity, sleep, and you. And I would say for you, the why for you is these hobbies, these things in our life that bring us energy and joy that perhaps are not there. Maybe it's a co-ed softball league at night. Maybe it's, crafting at home. Maybe it's, some other type of new hobby into the new year that's something fresh and new. But what happens with our bodies and with these rhythms of wellness is that they all feed into each other.
Mm.
And so there are a few times in my life when all of these are working well and are working
Mhm.
great and are working together. And this is where the area of wellness tends to have a whole load of shame that comes with it. And this gap between really the baggage we carry with the shame, as well as just living a life that is like firing on all cylinders, is to remember that any of these areas work towards your wellness. Any of these areas can actually unlock something. So if you are in a season where you have found a new hobby that you love, but you're really feeling discouraged about what you're eating or how much you're sleeping, I encourage people to go off of that. How are you making time for that? What are you learning from this hobby? What are these different components how do you feel while you're bowling with the guys? And what we do is we start to break our own assumptions that if something hasn't worked in the past, it won't work forward.
Mm.
And in reality, each of us still have these human bodies and these rhythms of wellness, that gap between shame and living a life on full cylinders, we could just get stuck in, we get caught in. I do as well too. But it's holding the reality of what we're made to do with energy with our current season, honoring both of them, and then looking for wherever we can find that movement when it
Wow.
comes to those rhythms.
Wow. Boy, that's really profound. I mean, because so often as leaders, we're like, should I take time for myself?
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
really, can I really do this? What's the thing?
Yeah.
One of the things that my wife of almost 28 years, the moment she kind of sees where I'm getting to that breaking point, she's like, why don't you go to a movie? Why don't
Yeah.
you just go, why don't you go to a movie? But even something like that, as small and trivial as it seems, that you time, I'm like, ooh, okay. All right. I can come back from this.
Yes, yes. I love how you mentioned about being bitter, because all of us have this bitter breaking point. We have this bitter breaking point where we just know, like, we can't see past it right now, and like you
Mm.
said, what a movie does for you, which is that moment of spending some you time, all of a sudden you feel like, "Okay, I can do another day. I can do another rhythm. I deserve this type of wellness for myself that I actually believe is best for the people around me."
Whew, I love that. What if you're in a position and season as a leader? So many of our listeners are, it's just pedal to the metal. Their boss has just been on them. It's early mornings, late nights. How do you make sure you're, carving out time, or how do you get to that place where you are going, okay, is it time? Because this job gives me absolutely no margin. I've got to find something, new. How do you kind of broach all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to answer that with one thing that is coming to mind that's inspirational, and one that's really practical. The inspirational part is that there is this new data out that the most compelling thing about us that people are looking for is inner peace. This was a recent study that was just done by the Barna Association, and what they have learned is that in the past, where it had been logic, and then previously it had been like purpose and social justice causes, is that right now the top thing that people are looking for when it comes to our culture, that want people to work with us, that want to emulate their life after us, like the most curious people are people who live a life of inner peace. Now, here's where this becomes really inspirational for us, is that for those of us who are leading, who are running businesses, who do put the pedal to the metal in what we have to do, we can allow that data to transform and say, again, what if on these calls, what if in these meetings, what if in landing these deals or sales or talking with my boss, what people are actually sensing most in our culture right now is somebody's level of inner peace that they present in that connection. So every time we are person to person, somebody is scanning for the inner peace level of the other person they are talking to. So again, when we think about deals, when we think about sales, when we think about building our teams, recruiting volunteers, what actually people are sensing right now in our cultural moment is the level of inner peace you bring to the situation. So tuck that away when we are viewing our workplace progress and what is actually transferring to wanting people to work with us and be around us. The second thing I would say is more practical, is that there can be this pace to peace with your day.
Mm.
If you've ever run a race, or if you've watched a race, there's always these pace setters of a race. They hold these signs to say, okay, here are the 10-minute miles, here's the 12-minute miles. I mean, I would be like the 18-minute mile right in the back, and so they're like holding these signs that are keeping the pace. But every race has a start and a middle and an end. And so if you are in the season of grind, if you are in the season, like you said, where it's very hard to not only take time for yourself, but also to voice what you need, you can set the pace of peace for your day. So maybe in the morning, there is just 10 minutes where it is quiet. Maybe it's some journaling, maybe it's a meditation app, maybe it's a book you're reading. This is before the kids are up, before the dog is barking, just 10 minutes before you engage in the day, in your phone, in your emails, in your calls, and set the tone of how you are going to show up for the day. Then I would say in the middle of the day, very practically, is where we get really hangry. This is the time of the day where that we're tired, we're hungry, we're thirsty. Who knows what our caffeine intake level has been? Maybe too high or too low. But we get to that middle part of our day, and we have to refuel on what is going to keep us centered and what is going to keep us really in a posture and a presence that people will sense from us. And so, very practically, this is, what foods are you packing for your day? What have you brought alongside of you? I live in the Midwest. And so, as we head into the new year, I really am encouraging people to stay warm. We have anxiety that gets higher when we're cold. So very practically, I was on a
Mm.
call earlier today. It was like I'm literally holding a hot cup of tea as I know I have a conversation that is going to be more conflictual, that is going to be more challenging for me. There's heated blankets. I mean, you can buy a big therapy dog, right, and just have them run in and sit on your lap. I can't it really just overestimate this way in which staying warm, especially if you're in colder climates going into the new year, really helps us just to refuel with a sense of peace. Final thing, at the end of the day, as you're thinking about your day, what I've learned to do is I keep this journal by my nightstand, and it just says wins. And each
Mm.
day I write down 2 wins for the day. And so what we know is that what is rewarded is repeated. I did not come up with that, but I cannot forget it. What is rewarded is repeated. And so for me, if I am focusing in on my wellness, at the end of the day, there are 2 wins to my wellness. And I write down different things. So today, when my son could not find one of his gloves and we were late for school, at the beginning of the day, I'm thinking, is this going to be one of my 2 moments that I am writing in my journal at the end of the night when I'm on
Wow.
my when I'm on my difficult call? Is this going to be a moment that I'm writing down? Because what we know is rewarded is repeated. And so you can set the pace for your day no matter what season you're in. But what do you want to remember at the end of your day and reward yourself for? That you are trying to move yourself another half click towards wellness, and it sets the tone for your day.
Wow. Wow. My goodness. Yeah, first thing that came to mind was just, you're talking about the cold with the anxiety. This morning here in Tampa, it was like 59, 60 degrees. And we were just, we were covering up because
Yeah, yeah,
I know, I'm
yeah, yeah.
sorry.
I will not be
I
sending you a heated blanket to Tampa. I refuse. The Chicago girl will not be sending you a heated blanket to Tampa.
I get it. I get it. No, boy, those are so good and practical. So as a leader, then, we've all been in the airplane. We've all heard them say, put your
Mm.
mask on first. What are some ways you gave us some practical suggestions that you do for your rhythms? What are some ways that sometimes when leaders are struggling with, okay, what does help fill my energy, keep it going throughout the day. What are some practical things, kind of like a menu to go, okay, hey, these are some of the things that, I should do in the morning, or I should do in the afternoon, or I should do before I go to bed.
Yeah, yeah. The question I usually like to start with is saying, what thing do you know you need to move forward that is taking the most energy that you're not doing?
Oh, yeah.
So, what is the thing that is taking the most of your energy that you know you should be doing, but you're not doing? So, sometimes that falls in the eating category, sometimes that falls in the activity category, sometimes that falls in the sleep category, sometimes that falls in the you category. Because the reality is, we are all these integrated beings, but we all have these different parts to us. But usually, there is one area that is taking an exorbitant amount of energy that we know if we even put 15 minutes towards it a day, it would just free up this mental capacity. These things are living rent free in our heads, but they are draining so much more than the time being. So I usually start with a leader with that question
Wow.
and usually somebody knows that answer. Maybe they don't want to say it, but
Yep.
they know it. And so when we think of living a life of joy, of energy, of purpose, we have to be mindful when something is taking more energy than actually deserves that right. And so what we want to do then is when somebody answers that question and then say, I know this could be hard to answer, but do you have any idea why that feels so hard to do?
Mm.
Because unlocking just an awareness of why not, it doesn't even mean we're going there yet, but
Mhm.
unlocking an awareness gives voice to it, it gives connection to it. It gives permission to it. So maybe it's we don't think that we have time for it. Maybe we think we're going to fail at it. Maybe we've tried something and it doesn't work again. Maybe there are real obstacles, physically or time wise. Usually we don't have enough time to implement it, but at least it moves from these feeling category to this fact category where we can objectively just say, these are the categories of our life that bring us energy. Which category do you know that you is taking up the most amount of your energy, that you're not doing something that you should? And let's objectively just say, why not? Is it time? Are you concerned about the amount of money it would take to pull it off? What is that? And so when we move to these objective pieces, we lower shame, we lower resistance. We have these abilities to, just how we would lead anybody on our team, we have a way to just lead
Mm.
ourselves through it, because
Wow.
we feel this gap to say, should, if I know this, this is so simple. I don't understand, but we have to just allow ourselves some type of activation step in it. From there, then I would then say we go and we brainstorm all the different pieces. So if it was in the eating category, we are in the time of year where any type of food plan, any type of 21-day something, any type of thing will work to implement. When I work with people on different food plans, I like it to be practical and I like it to be doable.
Mm.
And you have to know your personality going into that. So some people like a total 180. We are going to shift everything. I was with somebody yesterday and they said, I need a full pendulum shift when it comes to my eating. So you're like, great, that's what we can work on. So if you're a full pendulum shift and eating is your category heading into the new year, you want to look for a meal plan that is going to set you up well. You want to look for a 31-day boot camp. You want to look for something that is going to lock you in. If you also say with your personality, hey, I like to eat three meals a day, and 2 out of 3 of the meals are the same every single day, then it's like, amazing.
Mm.
Let's work with what you love to do. Okay,
Yep.
where do you go off? Where are you most tired? And so your work with those rhythms of your personality as well as the actual time limit of your schedule. And
Wow.
then you can get real practical. You can do that with activity, same thing. You can do a full pendulum shift. You can add in a 15-minute walk a day. I often tell clients, you are 15 minutes to find. You are
Oof.
15 minutes to find. You can find 15 minutes to get up. You can find 15 minutes to take a walk. You can find 15 minutes to call your friend. You can find 15 minutes to watch reels. You are 15 minutes to find. And for those of us who feel like we are in seasons where we are too far gone, that we are in a hole and the energy required to find the energy is not even there, I want to just speak into that and say, you are 15 minutes to find. It all counts. It all adds up. At 15 minutes a day, if you shifted any type of activity in any of those categories, you would start to feel your life come back to you.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that's just incredibly powerful. I mean, going way back to what you were talking about, even with the nighttime activity of, writing down the wins. So often I think Vanessa Van Edwards calls them the gremlins in our head.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think people of faith would, call it the enemy. Just the lies that are just infiltrate, and how
Yeah.
so often if we just continue to listen to them, it's, it just creates win amnesia. Like it just helps
Yeah.
us forget that we ever won before. And so even doing that practice that you suggested reminds us. One of my best friends, she always says when, struggles come up, and she's like, well, they can't take away your birthday, so you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, it's just, I mean, so many of these things that you've
Yeah.
given us just are so incredible. Why it's still so funny to me though. I'm 49. I'll be 50 in September. There's just these moments where, I know these things. I've read these things. I've learned these
Yep.
things.
Yep.
You get out of rhythm. You do all that kind of stuff. I would step in front of a bus for my wife, for any of my children, you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
maybe a few close friends.
Yep.
But myself, these are the type of things that are going to save me energy and longevity and my mind. And why it's just so crazy that, I don't treat myself better at times. And I know many of our listeners, probably can relate. And what you've just given us, here are so many. When it comes to accountability, how important it is to have that voice, that person that's just trusted to kind of speak into you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the lie of most of us who lead is that we can do it ourselves. And so we're constantly trying to do things faster and more efficient, which often feels the less people we include, the faster and more efficient we can do it. And the reality is that when we let people into our struggle, we not only see the results we want, but more than that, we feel the connection in the struggle.
Mm,
When after we had our second daughter, I hit this point with my physical health where I did not have energy. For any mom who has given birth, there's a lot of stuff that comes with our bodies post babies and caring for babies and finding time for ourselves and working and leading and all of it. And what I realized was that there were going to be these moments in which I had to decide. And I realized, like, I'm going to just get myself together and then I'm going to show myself in front of people. And what we know about any person's weight loss journey is the people I follow are the people who take me along for the journey.
mm,
Think of the social media posts, think of the books you read, think of the people who come top of mind when you just think about that category of weight loss. It's because they took us along for the journey. They didn't believe the lie that they had to show up all put together in order for somebody to want to be with them, for somebody to like them, for somebody to want to work with them. And I often remind myself of that in my own life and when I'm working with people, because the most powerful piece is when we take people along for the journey.
mm.
Not only do we see that in leadership, but we actually see that in wellness. And so if you're in a season as a leader and you are really struggling in one of these areas, be encouraged that that maybe is what your team will love to see, and these levels of vulnerability and authenticity, that they will actually lean in more as you bring them along. And the same works for wellness when it comes to these tiny tips that we're incorporating for ourselves. I think this is why workplace wellness is top of mind for a lot of places, where when teams do these walking challenges, or when teams have to check in about this certain amount of exercise they log, it's because there's this team connectedness. And so as a leader, say you're struggling with one of these components, if you actually brought your team in to be a part of it, it is so powerful, because you're leading, not saying I have this all put
Wow.
together, but I'm believing in the power of accountability and support. And chances are we're actually going to get better in the workplace if we do this wellness together.
Wow. Wow. One of the last things I wanted to ask you, I read different things from different people. Some say you have to have the same consistent morning routine every single day.
Huh.
Do the same
Yeah.
thing. Some people say, do what's best one day, do what's best. What do you think, wellness with morning routine? Are there any, pieces of gold you could give us? Are there any practices or rhythm, things that have been successful for you? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think no matter where somebody's personality falls on the line of structure to spontaneous, for all of us, structure allows for the spontaneous.
Mm,
So, no, often we think, well, I'm just too spontaneous. I'm not going to plan, when I'm going to work out. I'm just going to go when I feel like it, or I'm not sure what I want to have for lunch. I just want to decide. Totally cool. Everybody's personality is different on that spectrum, but I will say, structure allows for you to be spontaneous. So I would say, even with food, is that if you love a lot of variety in your food, that is amazing. Make sure that variety falls in line with your goals for your health. If you like a lot of structure with your food, and maybe, again, 2 out of 3 of the meals are the same meals, great. What does that look like for you to implement? But I think the best success still comes when there is a level of structure of morning, of afternoon, of evening, of these rhythms. You've probably read the same stats. Most people who are successful wake up early and they win the day and they have these practices before. And so try that. There's tons of permission to try. You are your own person
Mm.
doing your own thing. This is your life. You get to decide a lot of this. And sometimes with wellness, it feels like it's told to us. And instead, I want you to feel permission to try a
Oh,
whole
wow.
bunch of things. Try different eating plans, try different rhythms in the morning, try different sleep patterns, see what works for you, and allow yourself permission then to customize a 1 out of 1 plan that helps you feel energy and joy and purpose.
Wow. Is there anything in your morning routine that remains absolutely consistent? Like it's just every single morning this is the thing you do.
Yep. Every single morning, my alarm's usually up between 6 or 6:30. I'm still in the young kid season, so this is my life. I've got from 16 to 6, so I've got the full
Ooh,
range. So take your season as it is. I say that, but I wake up between 6 or 6:30. Right now I do 15 minutes of prayer meditation, and then I do 15 to 30 minutes of workout. And that is pretty consistent 6 out of 7 of the days. And with that, I feel centered. Um, I will also say this is that those two things rarely go undone each day. The amount of time I can give them, though, I give myself permission.
hmm.
So sometimes the workout pauses at 5 minutes and a kid runs down and doesn't have pants on, and I've got to figure all that out, and I'm done.
Yep.
And I still log it as long as I have pressed play on my prayer, as long as I have pressed play on my
So good.
workout. My brain checks it off that I have done my best to show up in those spaces. So I don't hold myself to the time. I hold myself to showing up in those spaces, and I just am faithful to whatever I can for that day. And then it checks off in my mind. I've taken care of myself. I am now ready to go forward to the people and places that I would show up in that day.
Wow. 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 Just powerful. Well, hey, before we press end on this interview, we'd love to ask you some rapid fire questions. We ask
Sure.
every guest. We're building this online library for our listeners to go and be inspired, find new resources, get new ideas. So, when it comes to speakers, for you, who is a speaker that just every time you listen to them, boy, they check all the boxes, challenge you in a way you never thought possible. You can't wait to share their talk with someone. Who is that person for you?
Yeah, so good. Because in order to do any of this work, we have to be consumers of really, really good work, which is great. So, top two people for me that I find myself sending off their talks is Megan Marshman. She's an incredible speaker, preacher, author. I always find that she's like speaking right to me. There's a humanity to her, but then it like moves me towards being better. And so, Megan Marshman. My second one is Ryan Leake.
Mm,
Ryan Leake is again an incredible speaker, coach, motivator. I do preaching as well, and so both of them have this preaching element to them of how do you take truth, but how do you communicate it in a variety of ways. So those would be my top two speakers I'm sending off right now.
I love it. Is there a podcast? If you're a listener of podcasts, not everybody is, but either guilty pleasure or development that just you keep coming back to, or you just can't wait to recommend to someone else.
Besides this incredible one,
Well,
correct?
thank
Yes,
you,
thank you.
thank you.
First of all, for all the good work you put out, all the content, all the voices you curate. This is a podcast like none other, and so grateful. I
Well,
hope
appreciate
you
it.
hear more and more encouragement of just the value you constantly bring to those of us who are trying to do this work of communication. So thank you for that. Besides this incredible one, I really enjoy Mind Shift. It's
Oh
by
yeah.
Erwin and Aaron McManus. They have an incredible perspective and worldview that I love to be challenged by. I think it's really good when we incorporate resources that are just not naturally in front of us. And so I really enjoy that one because I also do a lot within wellness and shame and working with female leaders in this area. Jess Connolly's podcast, she has an incredible podcast. She talks about all different pieces of health and wellness that are very, very detailed and practical. So, like, if you've listened to this and you're like, okay, tell me more, she's got incredible resources on that, but also constantly is how do we activate through the shame that often takes us out of the game.
Boy, I love that. Going back to mind shift, I also
Yes.
love the father-son dynamic.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
fascinating at times, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just interesting because you could tell at moments where Aaron says something and Erwin's like, "Ooh."
I know, right? It is.
It's
It's like a
great.
master class on how we want to be as parents, and his devotion to his wife and his family, and just the incredible brilliance he's put out. Yeah,
Yep,
I'm glad you brought that up. That
yep.
dynamic's really fun to listen to on the
And
podcast.
and I love even Erwin, I've heard him talk about, he's post 60 now and he's just sort of, he's said this himself. He's moved into that phase where he's like, I'm just gonna say what I'm thinking,
Yeah,
Maybe many
yeah.
years I held back, but so yeah, both I can't wait. And then lastly, a book. What's one book a listener who, you just say you've got to read this because it will change your leadership, it will change the way you communicate.
Yeah, one of my top books for this past year has been Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. Will Guidara is a Michelin star restaurateur and chef, and he did an incredible job with this book talking about hospitality. And I love the theme of hospitality and how it supersedes no matter what sector of business we work in, is again really how we relate and communicate and connect to people. I was at a conference last year and he was speaking and I got to meet him, and I don't think I've ever been as nervous. It was one of those where you're taking a picture and your hands are shaking, but you're like trying to stop them from shaking. And so I just respect so much of the work he does, but then also not only in our business sectors and with our teams, how we translate hospitality, but also for us as communicators.
Mhm.
How do we as communicators, the minute we get up on a stage, it's as if somebody's in our living room and we just allow them to feel from us this high value of
Oof.
hospitality. So it's challenged me greatly in how I craft talks, how I communicate talks, and what that looks like. And so that book has been highly recommended by me this year.
I love it. What's fascinating to me as I listen to Will, he's an interesting communicator in the sense that,
Yeah, yeah,
he's pretty this,
yeah,
you
yeah,
watch him
yeah,
on
yeah.
stage and he's got, his gait is slow, he's right, but oh, I mean, so powerful how he
I know.
stepped into his communication style. I can't remember
Yeah,
who said it, maybe Eugene Peterson. But stories are hospitality. And, you
yeah,
think about, so often as communicators, how can we, bring this next level of care to the
yeah,
people who are listening to us communicate, especially with
yeah,
stories, especially with, I love all of that.
yeah,
I love it.
yeah. It's so good.
Well, this has been powerful. I mean, I filled a few pages of notes. So appreciate you opening up your vault and sharing your wisdom. Where can our listeners find more about you, get more information about what you do and who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on social at Jackie F. Glass or my website, jackieglass.com. I'm happy to connect more. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a joy to round two to have this conversation. Is different than round one. So this is
Absolutely.
great.
Absolutely. I
But
love
thank
it.
you again for just the good work and for just your hospitality and inviting me in and many of us to just continue the good. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Speak with People podcast, where we believe that healthy communication is the key to unlocking your leadership potential. Thank you for leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And thank you for every like and every comment. Every single time you cut and copy a link and send it to a coworker or a friend, it absolutely means the world, and it helps each other transform our communication skills. Lastly, don't forget about a great resource that's available to you, our communication skills library. At the end of every episode, we ask each guest their favorite speaker, their favorite podcast, their favorite book, and we've compiled all of those resources together to give you an amazing library to continue your growth and development. Thank you again for being a listener and for being a part of the Speak with People community.